You're listening to Theater and College Hoops. I'm Suvi. Alongside me, as always, Taylor Dammel. We're brought to you by Belly Up Media. Go download, subscribe, rate, and review us on whichever device it is that you use. I really hope my voice and excitement is projecting and beaming through your speakers, your headphones, whatever you're listening to, because we got previews today. I'm fired up to talk previews. Doing the research was a lot of fun. It's just we're getting so close, Taylor. We're almost to what I think a month away or so, a month away from college hoops. But I'm very, very excited. Your college hooper of the day is Yante Mayton. I don't know if you remember Yante there, former forward at Georgia, SEC Player of the Year in 2017. That should tell you what conference we're going to be kicking off our predictions and our projections for. Of course, that is the SEC. But Yante Mayton, SEC Player of the Year in 2017, playing for Georgia. He signed a two-way with Miami. If Dame Lillard was available back in 2017, I'm sure Pat Riley would offer up Yante Mayton as a trade chip there. I'm sorry, Taylor. I got to get one last joke in there on the Dame trade and Heat
I'm
and
okay.
all
I'm
that.
okay. I'm not upset. Okay, I'm very probably minority of Miami Heat fans that are not like completely upset by this, but we can dive into that.
So
That's
you're
fine.
not in your emo phase.
No, but I mean, Jimmy Butler's like the king of media day, so I'm totally fine with that look. I love it. You know,
Yante,
you got to bring got to bring some good attention to the program there.
oh my God. I rolled my eyes. I cringed, as you can imagine. But again, this is all just me being upset about the fact that subconsciously Butler beats my favorite team in the ECF, and you bring in Drew Holiday, and then you're like, didn't Jimmy Butler drop like 56 on his head or something like that in the first round? So at this
Here's
point,
what
I'm just taking pot shots at Jimmy and his hair.
Here's what I'll say because a very high amount of listeners to this podcast are Celtics fans. Very high. I bet I might be the only Miami Heat fan that listens to this podcast, whatever. But let me just say this: you guys wouldn't have to joke about Miami if you didn't care about Miami. So
Oh
let me
yeah.
just I'll just make sure to remind everybody that
Oh, you're 100% right. And I think I saw a quote from Joel Embiid who said something
Oh,
along the lines of
oh
like, have
my
they
God.
surpassed us? And so like if a Heat player said that, I'd get really insecure and feel the need to tweet. But Joel Embiid and the Sixers saying that, and Kelly Oubre, I think, was like, we're coming to I'm coming to a winning team. I'm just like, I'm tired of punching down on the Sixers. They're just
Who
not worth
cares
my time
about
anymore.
who cares about Tsunami Poppy at this point?
That's
Like
still his Twitter handle.
I don't know. But like, I mean, I was talking about this with a couple other folks, and it was like, yeah, oh yeah, have they surpassed us? I'm like, Joel, you might want to worry about the Heat first. Like, you're not even worried about like maybe the best team. Sorry, maybe the best team in the Eastern Conference. You wouldn't say that on paper, but look at the results the last couple of years. So, okay, the
Done.
Heat aren't the best team in the Eastern Conference, but the results would maybe suggest otherwise. So
I wouldn't worry about the Heat, the Celtics, or the Bucks. I would worry about the likes of the Raptors and the Hawks, who they lost to a couple of years ago. Like, worry
Magic
about those teams.
Magic City, that would maybe
Yeah.
be a bigger opponent than anyone in the Eastern Conference to the Sixers at this point.
I think I saw a tweet saying that James Harden's going to show up looking like Jenny Sack, which really made me like snarf my drink. If you're a Sopranos fan, you know what that means. But we've gotten off the rails. Yante Mayton, he is your college hooper of the day. Check out the website at theaterandcollegehoops.com and make sure to follow me at CVB Theater to find out where the feet is. You should also follow Taylor at Taylor Dammel. Let's open the curtains. Taylor, we're back, man. I know we took last week off. Let me ask you this very high level, simple, direct question. Are you ready to hit the ground running, my friend? Because we're going to start to ratchet up these episodes per week. We're about to dive into some juicy matchups, and it all starts with predictions, which we're going to crack into today. Are you pumped? Are you rejuvenated, re energized, and ready?
In short, yes. And let me tell you a reason as to why. So this isn't just having to do with, having a newborn, although it really is having to do with having a newborn here, is that I have actually drank some Red Bulls recently, which is not something I've done sans vodka in like I don't know, high school. It's like I have high school in my mouth all over again. Pause. That's how excited and ready I am for this season. Is in preparation for our previews here. Gotta make sure that I'm, light, ready, light on my feet, I should say, in an athletic position, ready to make a move. And that's where we are. I did, you know, not only did I just feed my daughter, but I also, made sure to energize myself before this program as well. And I was very excited to hear your tone, let's call it, in the intro of this program, because I can tell that you're naturally pretty excited for this as well.
I'm incredibly excited. Thank you. I'm glad that it did resonate. This is almost like the weather changing when you walk outside and there's a little bit of a fall crisp in the air. You get a little bit more of a pep in your step. Well, my voice elevates a little. I get a bit more excited as we turn the page to October. We got baseball going on right now, the postseason, which in my estimation is the best postseason of the four major sports. But Taylor, we got previews, and I'm so excited. And so we're gonna start today with the SEC. All right, we're gonna dive into everything like Coach of the Year, like Player of the Year, the SEC champ, and we're gonna add a little bit of a new bit here. I don't know if many other platforms or podcasts or outlets have done an all transfer team, but because transfers have become so relevant and because people like the transfer portal is absolutely wild, we are now at a point, Taylor, where it's worth it for us to highlight, in my estimation and your estimation, the five best transfers that have come and descended on each and every conference. And before you get your panties in a bunch, we're going to get the power schools or the power conferences. We're going to get some of the mid majors as well. But Taylor, I think I'm most pumped to talk with you about the transfer teams.
Well, dude, I mean, you and I obviously pay a lot of attention to what's happening in college basketball, even throughout this summer. But the transfer portal, excuse me, is still pretty new for us too. I mean, it's been around for a couple of years, but as we talked about last year coming into this year, that it really kind of hit its peak, or what I feel like we both feel like its peak is going to be in last year and this year, maybe one more year before maybe things settle in. That could change, of course, NIL deals and stuff coming around. But I feel like the transfer portal at some point is going to peak out. I think we're there now where it's just not going to be feasible for literally 1,500 college basketball players to transfer each and every year. A couple of guys are already on their second and even third transfers. We have one guy in this conference who transferred from a team to a team back to the original team. And so that's a notable one. I'm not sure if he's going to break into my top five here, but it's certainly a notable transfer. Um, and so you just kind of forget when you sit down to look at the list of new faces and new places, and you're like, oh my God, this is like, you get to the 15th transfer and you're like, yeah, that's still a starter. That's still like a legitimate all conference type of player. So this conference specifically, having not dove into all of the other conferences quite as much as this one, of course, quite yet, it was, I mean, am I wrong to say it was, I don't want to say shocking, but I was definitely taken aback by remembering how many really notable players had transferred into this conference.
It's one of those deals, Taylor, where you say, wow, this is surprising. But then you take a step back and you say, should I be this surprised? And because we've been around the game for, I think now at this point, upwards of 20 years, just seeing the landscape change in real time is kind of jarring and a bit shocking. So to your point, Taylor, it really shouldn't be that surprising that teams and coaches are building their rosters around high impact transfers. If you don't embrace the transfer portal, you're going to be left in the dust. And that goes for pretty much all sports. The only other sport I can really speak to is college football. You look at a team like Clemson and Dabo Swinney, who's been so steadfast against the transfer portal, and they are nowhere near as good as they were maybe pre-transfer boom. So Taylor, you're right. Like we haven't hand up. I haven't taken an in-depth look into some of these other conferences like we did with the SEC, but I would expect to see 7 or 8 high level, high impact transfers that are going to move the needle to getting some of these teams to the second or third weekend of the NCAA tournament. And I'm so fired up to really dive into those, Taylor. And before we do that, though, I want to just give a disclaimer or just give some notice to the SEC fans out there that may be still clinging on to football. I'm telling you right now, focus on basketball. I'm going to make the case for every single fan base. Okay. So it's basketball season for the SEC. Georgia fans, are you really even having fun anymore? Having go for a three-peat, fine. Seems boring. Aren't you bored at this point? So, Georgia, focus on basketball. Kentucky, let's be serious here. Let's be real. Let's have an honest conversation. I know you're playing Georgia. I know you're undefeated. You are a basketball school. Doesn't matter what Mike Stoops does. And actually, I think that's a big reason why he's loving it there is because he's good for
Or
7, 8
Mark
wins and he's good.
or Mark Stoops either.
Did I say Mike?
Yes.
Sorry. Meant Mark. Kentucky, be serious. You're a basketball school. Mizzou, I don't really like Eli Drinkwitz that much. He seems like kind of a stiff. I think they're undefeated still. But in relation to Dennis Gates, who got them to the NCAA tournament, won a game, Mizzou should be more excited about basketball. Florida, come on. We know what's been happening there. You're 3-2 under Billy Napier. He might get fired. Not been a good season for Florida. Vols, I think they had their fun last year. They already have a loss this year. I think they're ranked 22 in the country, but look at what you got in Thompson Bowling Arena. And we're going to dive into the Vols. That's a Final Four potential squad. So Vols, get off of football. South Carolina, all I've heard about is Spencer Rattler and Shane Beamer. They're 2-3 on the season, sub 500. Move on to college basketball, although I don't know if it's going to be that much better. Vandy, Jerry Stackhouse did a nice job last year, and your football program has like construction going on during the games. Move on to basketball. Bama, I don't know. Maybe you will sneak into the playoff. You only have one loss, but Bama fans seem very upset. Move on to Nate Oates, who can get you to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. TAMU football, I don't know. Jimbo Fisher seems like kind of a con man at this point, but they only have one loss, so maybe be excited about that. But you got a great product on the basketball floor as well, and one really good player who we're going to highlight. LSU, 2 losses already. Not much going on in basketball, so maybe just a bad year for LSU. Ole Miss, I'll tell you what, Chris Beard's been to a Final Four. He's been in a national title game. I don't think Lane Kiffin's done that. Auburn, Hugh Freeze, another weirdo, kind of like Eli Drinkwitz. But Auburn, you got a solid program with Bruce Pearl. Focus on them. Arkansas, let's be real. Eric Musselman is going to get you to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament every single year. Sam Pittman, on the other hand, is now going viral for fans wanting to sink his boat and viral for his chest. Let's leave it at that. They're also sub 500. Mississippi State got Chris Jans. He went to the NCAA tournament, broke a 4-year drought. And right now your football program is sub 500 at 2-3. So that's the case I'm making for all SEC fans to now pivot and shift their attention to basketball. How did I do, Taylor?
I'd say that's pretty accurate. I'm with you on all that. Interesting to note of everybody you just talked about there. Chris Beard is the only new coach this year in the SEC, so these coaches should not be what's the word I'm looking for? Invisible or unknown to their fan bases. And Chris Beard is probably one of the 4 or 5 more notable coaches. Not best, but most noteworthy or best name recognition in this conference. So I like the Alabama part though, because I mean, Alabama not looking good. Georgia really honestly not looking that good either football wise.
That's
So I
true.
mean, at least Bama can fall back on their very good now basketball program, but Georgia can't really fall back on their basketball program.
Hey, shout
So
out Ben Gonzalez. Thank you for coming on to the
yes,
program.
thank
We
you.
love you,
Thank you,
Ben.
Ben. Coach of the year, Ben Gonzalez coming up here. But yeah, I mean, okay, let's be real. Alabama's gonna have a better basketball team than Georgia this year. Okay, so
I would think so too.
yeah. So I have a question for you, Sue, just right off the top of your head. I don't want a maybe. Okay, I'm gonna need a yes or a no from you, and I'm gonna ask you
I'm
this.
feeling so good. Yes.
Well, now it's gonna be prompted for every other preview show, but is there, yes or no, is there a Final Four team from the SEC this
year? I'm going to err yes.
Because that's a tough question. It's a tough question.
Sounded constipated, but I'm going to say yes.
They kind of remind me of like a Big Ten football season where they have like 6 teams that are going to finish like 5 through 15, but maybe not one that goes to the Final Four. So If I have to answer the same question, I'm gonna say no.
No.
But they
Okay.
might, but they might have the most Sweet 16 teams of any conference. So this is gonna be a tough one. This is a tough one, I think. I mean, maybe I'm off base with that. I don't know if you're. I feel like there's a lot of teams in that 10 or maybe 8 to 20 range in this conference. Am I off base on that?
Not at all. And I'm glad you put my feet to the fire because I would have said maybe. I think the Shark, if he was listening, he'd be like, "Yeah, of course you say maybe because you're on the fence about everything. You just go whichever way the wind blows." But I've long stated that it's a fool's errand to try and predict the NCAA
Sure,
tournament.
sure.
But I do think there is something to be said about predicting regular season because that's how it really goes. But I think there's one team that
I
is a
agree.
serious threat for the Final Four. Now, if this was the ACC, and we're going to get to the ACC, ask me this question for the ACC, I won't sound as constipated in saying yes. I'm going to say absolutely yes because the ACC, no matter what year, no matter how the teams are, they seem to always put someone in the Final Four.
So we won't say who, but I think we're going to be in agreement on who that Final Four team is. But I wonder if that's who you're going to have winning this conference. We'll see. We'll see
We'll
coming
see.
up.
Taylor, I've been doing way too much talking. Let's dive in first, though. Coach of the Year predictions, the man patrolling the sideline, who wins it out of the SEC?
So I'm going to go with old Muscle Milk there this year. And I think it's not necessarily because they're going to have the best team, although they have some very good odds to win the national championship this year, surprisingly. I just think that they had kind of an underwhelming year last year down there in Fayetteville. And not necessarily of anyone's fault. They had a lot of injuries. Of course, lost a lot of players to pro basketball. And they absolutely, I mean, Arkansas might as well be the transfer portal itself because they grabbed a lot of transfers, the transfer portal. So good on Muscle Milk there for who just went to a Beyonce concert last night or 2 nights ago. I saw with his wife Danielle. I also have a wife named Danielle, spelled differently than his wife Danielle. But yeah, I'm going with Eric Musselman. I just feel like not because they're going to be the best team. Quite honestly, they might not even finish top 3 in this conference, even though they have a very good team. But I think just because I think they only had 8 conference wins last year, I don't think that repeats this year. If you'd like a second pick, would you like a
Talk to
second
me.
pick? I
Talk.
think
I mean,
Bruce.
you're on record. You're on record as Musselman. So if Bruce
Yeah,
Pearl does get it, it doesn't
no,
count.
no, it doesn't count. I'm saying Bruce Pearl, who did a very good job in the transfer portal as well, and I feel like they're kind of an under talked about team in this conference coming into the season this year. So Bruce Pearl would be my second pick. That's not who I'm saying is going to win. I think Eric Musselman is going to win the Coach of the Year here in the SEC.
You mentioned something really interesting that I want to unpack, Taylor, about Arkansas, and you're right. The way we view Arkansas now and what he's done, Musselman, is nothing short of amazing because you just said they kind of had an underwhelming season last year. And people forget that Nick Smith Jr. was injured for majority of it. And people forget that they ended up knocking off the defending champion in Kansas. And people forget that yet again, and keep me honest here, yet again, Arkansas went to the second weekend. Didn't they go to the Sweet 16 again? Please keep me honest there. But it's just amazing what Musselman does. And you can make fun of him for being a tryhard, for taking his shirt off, being crazy. The results speak for themselves. And at some point, I'm sure Arkansas fans are going to be saying, please just push through to a Final Four. But in that conference, and the way he's adapted to the transfer portal, like you had mentioned, and the way that he just continuously gets results for the Hogs, it's nothing short of remarkable. And you're right, like the bar is so high for Arkansas that we think last year's season was a little underwhelming. When in reality, if you take a step back, if that's underwhelming, I think a lot of folks would want to be that underwhelming team. Am I wrong, by the way, on Arkansas getting to the Sweet 16, or did they only beat Kansas?
I'm looking at that right now. I just can't. I keep
No,
forgetting.
no, because they had to have gotten to the Sweet 16 because they were the 8 seed or 9 seed, and then they played the 1 seed
Yeah,
Kansas
that's right. They went to the Elite Eight, right?
last year. I think 2 years ago they did.
Oh, 2 years ago. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Yeah, excuse me.
Regardless, I mean, Musselman's a solid pick.
Yeah, they lost to UConn in the Sweet 16 this year. So yeah, I mean Illinois, Kansas, and UConn were the teams that they had to play in the tournament. Um, Having to play Kansas and UConn back to back, quite a tall task there. So, but it's still just shocking to me that how far back. And you are right with the expectations that we now have put on them or have of them now. They did finish. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th in the SEC last year. So I mean that's pretty crazy that they finished that far back. But again, that's to my if I was a betting man, if
They were
that's
11th in the SEC last year?
right. Let me see if I can count. Let me see.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th. They were 10th. Excuse me. 10th, tied with Mississippi State. They were 8 and 10 in the SEC. Florida, Auburn, Vandy, Tennessee,
Golly.
Missouri, Kentucky, TAMU, and Bama. I mean, TAMU, remember, also finished second in the SEC last year, so not exactly what you would have expected as well.
Jeez.
Even was refreshing to look at that again to remind myself that old Buzz's boys finished second in the SEC last year because I feel like they were under talked about throughout the entire season as well.
And I think they might be again this upcoming season. But okay, so you're going to go with Musselman, honorable mention, Bruce Pearl. I like it. I'm going to shift. All right. My coach of the year prediction is the Golden Boy, baby. I've been on him ever since he had that great game in the NCAA tournament with the Dons at San Francisco. I love Todd Golden. I think he breaks through and wins SEC Coach of the Year. Taylor, you mentioned all of these returning faces and Beard being the only one that's net new. This is only Todd Golden's second year. I think it's the same thing with Chris Jans, but Todd Golden, I think, is going to take that leap and get Florida back into tournament talk. All right. So I think my honorable mention is actually going to be Chris Beard because what he does on a basketball court, I think is wizardry almost. And I don't think anyone expects anything from Ole Miss. I expect them to be a bubble team, which in 1 year, if Beard does that, he very well could be SEC Coach of the Year. But I'm going to stick with Todd Golden.
Well, nobody's going to vote Chris Beard in. I mean, it's not necessarily about performance though either, because I do you think the media
A
is going to vote?
narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not trying to argue your point because your
No,
point
I
is
hear you.
correct. I'm just saying that in the actual voting, I'm not sure he's going to get enough votes to get up that high. But continue on. Sorry to
You think
interrupt.
he's got some image rehab that he needs to do that takes a year?
Oh yeah,
I'm
maybe.
serious.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So
yeah, there's a couple SEC coaches that have gone through that in, even at that school specifically, Hugh Freeze,
yeah,
Bobby Petrino years ago. Yeah, they got a couple schools down there that have had to have some image rebuilding before. Let's put it that way.
you're right. Second Hugh Freeze reference of the program. But anyway, I'm going to go with Todd Golden. No Colin Castleton. That's the first thing that pops out. Colin Castleton goes to the pros, and that's a huge loss for Florida. And he broke his hand towards the end of the year last year, which really stunk as they were trying to make a push for a postseason berth. But no Colin Castleton. But what they do have, what Todd Golden does have, is Will Richard, Riley Kugel, and Zion Pullen, baby. Zion Pullen, an incredible, talented scorer coming out from UC Riverside, all the way across the country, baby. But those three, that's a three-headed monster. All three should be in double digits. They're going to score the ball. And so there's not really any freshmen that I expect will have to step up for Florida. I think being in Todd Golden's system for a year is going to prove worthwhile and is going to help the Gators for this second season. They're a pretty veteran laden group. And if they can rely on Kugel, who's coming back for his second season, and Will Richard, and then of course Zion Pullen, who's played college basketball for I think now 4 years, 3 or 4 years, this is a really nice base for Florida and for Todd Golden to really build some momentum. And so the question is, should they win the games, or will they win the games that they should win? I think they will. I think last year in a first season upheaval, I don't know if Florida was going to win some of the games that you would expect a Florida team to win. This year, with the talent that they bring back and the cohesion, I expect them to take care of the Q3, the Q4 games, maybe even some of the Q2. The question is, can they be solid in Q1 opportunities? That's where I'm really hoping Todd Golden takes it to the next level. not just being competitive in those games, but actually pulling some off. Maybe a like 2 games below 500 in those Q1 opportunities. If you can be 500 in those opportunities, I expect Florida to be a tournament team. So give me Todd Golden. Give me the fact that he has Will Richard, Kugel, and Zion Pullen, who's going to be a huge impact transfer. And the fact that I think Todd Golden can just straight up coach. I think he's one of the best coaches, or better coaches, I should say, in that conference. So I'm going to take Golden for SEC Coach of the Year in Florida, gets back on track, and restores some order for their basketball program.
So, I mean, we have this discussion every year with every conference, but how do you feel about, because do you feel like in either of these two coaches are that we've picked, are they the best coach in the conference?
You
No.
can make a case for Musselman.
Okay. Okay, sure. But so do you like it when the coach of the year goes to the team that makes like the biggest improvement, or it's just a theory
The
question rather than
goalposts move. The goalposts
right.
always move.
Okay. Right.
I mean,
Because it could have
like I don't know. Like for someone, it could be they win it because they made such a drastic improvement, or like you look at the Big 12. Like when was the last time Bill Self won the Big 12 Coach of the
right.
Year?
Yeah, I think he only has like 3 or something like that, like total. And in the NBA, if you're the coach of the year, you're automatically getting fired like the next year. So that's
Dwayne
definitely
Casey.
something. Yeah,
Dwayne Casey got fired the year.
Monty Williams. Yeah, like I mean, there's a lot of examples of this,
Good
right?
point.
So yeah, just more of like a theoretical question. Going forward, I guess it could probably changes conference to conference too, really, because Calipari could have won it like 6 years in a row in this conference. Coach K could have won it 15 years in a row in the ACC, essentially. So,
But not even Coach K. He never like how many conference regular season conference titles does he have?
yeah, you're right.
Not a lot.
Not that many over the last 15 years specifically. So,
But I see what you're saying, Taylor, like in the sense that is it just sustained excellence year after year after year, or is it the biggest improvement? I personally think there's some sort of happy medium. And actually, that's why your Musselman pick isn't bad, right? Like he's been sustained very good. And last year, in the eyes of many, they had a down year. And you're right, like they finished 10th last year. And I think some people might say, well, if he's able to get them a top in the top half or the top quarter of the SEC with new faces, good for him. That's something that should be commended. I would argue that that's his whole roster construction philosophy that he's bringing in these transfers. I just personally think that Florida has so much room for growth, and they'll reach that potential, and they'll get back to the NCAA tournament. And Todd Golden's a new, fresh face that he's going to take this home. All right, moving on now, Taylor. Let's go to the player of the year. Who you got?
so I wonder if you foreshadowed this earlier when we talked about an talked about team and a team that had a very good player, not very good players, but a very good player, a guy that shares my first name as his last name, and his family does 4 times over in this situation, and that's Wade Taylor the fourth,
Yeah.
Bama. And I am gonna actually, speaking of the shark and waffling, I'm actually gonna say that Wade Taylor's not the best player in the conference, but if you look at teams that have very good players, like a Tennessee, who's older than NBA teams, I bet you we're going to see that stat this year too. That Tennessee has an older roster, older starting lineup than like an NBA team that does this year. But Wade Taylor, not that his teammates are bad, but he's clearly the standout guy on his team. Kentucky's got 4 5-star recruits on their team. They likely have a freshman of the year coming from that team because they've got 3 of the top 5 freshmen in the country, right? Teams like Tennessee are just so deep. Auburn is spreads the ball, or they're going to spread the ball around. It's going to have a lot to do with their guard play, how well they do going forward. But they're going to have a team that is, in my opinion, pretty even. You can say the same thing about a number of these teams in the conference, but I think TAMU specifically is going to go only as Wade Taylor does. So he could probably shoot the ball a little better. I think he only shot 39% from the field last year, which is pretty good. Which means TAMU's performance was pretty good considering their best player only shot 39% from the field. But he's certainly got the experience. He's going to have the ball in his hands all day, every day, twice on Sundays type of deal. And so just from a usage standpoint, from a lead dog standpoint, and from a team that should still be pretty good, I'm going to go with Wade Taylor.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm going Wade Taylor as well. Uh, I think it's going to come down to Wade, Pullen, and Dalton Connect. I need to brush up on my pronunciations, by the way, prior to the
Hold on,
season.
I'm gonna interrupt you already just because you brought him up. What marketing loser didn't get this guy the number 4 at Tennessee?
Connect four. Wow, not bad.
And he's the only starter that's not returning from last year on that team. Not that not all the starters are returning, but he's the only transfer that's going to start. So talk about like a perfect marketing opportunity. The transfer, the Connect Four, like come on Tennessee. And so I went back and looked at their
Does
roster.
he
They don't
play
have.
the four also?
I that's yeah. He
Small
very well.
forward, power forward.
Yeah. I mean, positionless basketball in today's world, but
Yes.
like he's number 3, and then where he transferred from, Northern Colorado, he's number 5. And Tennessee doesn't have a number 4 on the team, so I'm like, I don't
Split
know
the difference.
where in the world, where the marketing people for this NIL deals. I don't know who has Connect Four. Is it Hasbro? I don't know, but we really, I think, missed an opportunity. We do have to bring a shark in for this because maybe I don't think Tennessee is a number 4 retired or anything like that. I don't know. Sorry, we're just way off on a tangent.
No, no, no.
We're gonna talk about this team more later, I'm sure, but I was very upset when I saw that he was number 3 and there wasn't a number 4 on the roster, especially because I was going to say throwing necked, and then I realized that his name was Connect instead, and so I was like, "Come on, come on, Tennessee, let's get our shit together here." Sorry, continue on with your discussion.
Don't apologize. This is really the inspiration of the show. If we go back to our roots, Taylor, we said we're not box score X's and O's guys. All right. What we are is making Connect Four jokes and throwing knack to all that stuff. Like that is why people come to us, and that's why we're here recording. But I think the player of the year is going to come down to Wade Taylor, Zion Pullen, and Dalton Connect there. 2 transfers, but it's going to go to the guy that's established and who has been there for Texas A&M. It's all about taking that next step for the Aggies. They were a tournament team last year. They got embarrassed in that first round game against Penn State. Shouldn't be too hard on yourself, though. That's what happened when you play against Shrewsbury, baby, who's going to have a really rough first season at Notre Dame. I feel bad for Micah. But last year, Penn State embarrassed and knocked the socks off of Texas A&M in that first round game. They're going to make the tournament again. It's just about the seed. Taylor, I personally think they're going to be a top 5 seed come NCAA tournament time. And a lot of that's going to be with a proven coach like Buzz Williams, but I think Wade Taylor is going to have to carry them. Shades of AC Law potentially there in College Station. I love Wade Taylor. And you're right. That's the one glaring issue when I was doing a deep dive and when I was taking a look at some of the players and how he stacks up. His shooting percentage is a bit troubling, especially his 3-point shooting percentage. I don't think he shoots nearly well enough to be a difference maker from beyond the arc. But if he can improve a little bit on his 2-point shots, I have no doubt in my mind that he can be such a difference maker that he ends up taking that trophy home. I'm expecting 20-5 out of Wade Taylor, which is damn good for a college point guard. And that it might be enough to be like fringe. I don't think he's going to be a Naismith player of the year, but that might be enough to have him in those discussions around like January, maybe February. And then the likes of Zach Edey and some other, and like Hunter Dickinson will probably separate from the pack. But as it relates to the SEC itself, you got a guy who's been in this system, who's seasoned vet, Wade Taylor. I'm expecting a 20-5 type of season from him, and I'm expecting the Aggies to win ball games, Taylor. You go to like the coach of the year. I think if a team is winning games, they could very well do that, maybe in spite of coaches. But I'm a firm believer in the players that play are they're going to be the difference makers, and Wade Taylor is going to be carrying this Aggies team. One last note, you mentioned about like how he's the big name for the Aggies. Isn't it crazy? Henry Coleman, who came over from Duke a couple of years ago. He was a Duke level player. He got some minutes there. And I think Henry Coleman's actually a very solid player. But man, this is Wade Taylor's team. And I think he's going to win player of the year.
So let's see. So the best odds to win National Player of the Year are a guy we haven't even brought up yet, and that's another transfer in Grant Nelson. Or did you just say
in the conference?
In the conference, yes.
Okay. I thought you just meant in the entire country. I was like,
No,
what?
no. Well, so what? So that's what I'm saying. Like the best odds to win National Player of the Year of the SEC in the SEC of any player or from the SEC, I should say, is Grant Nelson with Alabama. But
Indeed.
you've got and not that betting odds are the determinant of who wins Conference Player of the Year, but Khalif Battle's right there, Justin Edwards, all these guys that are kind of Wade Taylor are all in that 6,500 to plus 8,000 range. But you've got, yeah, it kind of goes to my point about this whole conference, right? It's you got a lot of guys that are right there, not the upper crust of the college basketball world, like like a Zach Edey or Kyle Filipowski or Hunter Dickinson or Armando Bacot or whatever, But you've got a lot of guys who are going to be that like second team, third team, All American type of guys who are in there. And like I said, Wade Taylor's like the fourth or fifth highest odds to win National Player of the Year from this conference. But I think that in this conference play, yeah, it's still Wade Taylor.
I think impact is going to be huge. Like,
well, yeah, that's the point, right? It's team impact, right? And that doesn't necessarily parlay into the National Player of the Year conversation, but in the SEC Player of the Year conversation or Conference Player of the Year conversation, it applies, I think.
And I think if you clip what I just said, you could be like, yeah, no shit, obviously. But I just don't know if Grant Nelson is going to have that huge of an impact on Bama when you look at their roster. I mean, Mark Sears is coming back. I'd expect him to be the lead guy. But when I look at lead guys, I'm looking at Wade Taylor. And I don't even know if Dalton Connect is going to be a lead guy at Tennessee. He's going to be an impactful player, but they're just so balanced. I look at a guy like Zion Pullen. Sure, he may end up being the lead guy, but can he be that if he just comes in year one with Riley Kugel and Will Richard? Wade Taylor is poised, primed, and ready to go. Buzz is going to give him the basketball, and it's going to be his team. And that's why I think he ultimately wins out over some of these other really talented players. All right, Taylor, let's move on now. Who's winning? Who's winning this conference? Who you got?
So I think people should be able to figure out who we both think. I think we both have the same team. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be Tennessee for me. Too deep, too much experience. Like I said, I mean, you've got what, 3 fifth-year starters on the team. You got a bunch of 23-year-olds out there playing against. They're going to be a great team to bet on against like a Kentucky because it's going to be like 5 23-year-olds versus 5 18-year-olds. It's going to be really and like Antonio Reeves. I mean, like it's going to be really interesting matchups in this conference. But I mean, you've just got a team that's proven to be a top 15 team program in the country now at this point over the last handful of years. In Tennessee, they are, as we've talked about, I don't want to say ad nauseum, but whatever is next step below ad nauseum on this program is they have been knocking on the doorstep of the Final Four for years now. And they just can't seem to get over that hump. I'm not sure they get over that hump this year, unfortunately. They certainly have the experience to do so. They certainly have the coaching to do so. I bet you if you ask Tennessee fans, they would say that if not this year, then when? Because next year is going to be a pretty considerable roster turnover in my estimation. But I think this is their year here in the SEC. I just think that they're going to be too talented, too experienced. And at some point, this team's got to figure out how to score the basketball, right? I mean, you think with a bunch of guys this old and have played this much basketball in their lives that they're going to figure out how to score more than like 59 points a game. Maybe I'm off base on that, but I'm like, at some point, one of these guys has to make a shot, right? And then obviously, Zakai has had injury issues over the last few years. His return to health is going to be huge, especially if he can stay healthy all year. And maybe that's the difference maker between them getting past a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 and into the Final Four is, can Zakai Ziegler take them that far? And can he stay healthy enough to take them that far?
Fingers crossed. I really hope so. I genuinely remember, Taylor, us jumping on here and recording when the Ziegler injury broke. And I was gutted. It sucked. It was really, really brutal because of how much he puts into that program. You're right about the scoring. I feel like Santiago Vescovi, when he gets cold, like it's the Michael Irvin quote when he's like, man, when we were out there, and it was cold, we was cold. Like when Santiago Vescovi is cold, he is cold, right? That's the more apt saying than when it rains, it pours. Like when he's cold, it's cold. I feel like Santiago Vescovi needs to give us a little bit more of a consistent output, and I think he will give us that. But Rocky Top, baby, I'm so excited. I want to sing Rocky Top, but I'll wait for that maybe another week or before the season. I'm going with Tennessee as well. The Vols are going to win the SEC. This team is just loaded, Taylor, top to bottom. You talk about their veteran leadership. You talk about how seasoned they are. This is like going to your friend's high school graduation party, and there's just everything in the spread. You got brats, burgers, beers, pasta salad, potato salad. There's muffin or not muffins, but cupcakes at the end. Everything you want. There's a pool that you can swim in. There's Doritos. You got Cool Ranch. You got nacho cheese. You got everything. Tennessee is the best high school graduation party that you've been to. They have everything. All right. This is a top 3 seed in my estimation. I could see them having double-digit Q1 wins, Taylor, and I think that's where they're really going to separate themselves. I talked about the Q1 wins, what Florida needs to do, what Todd Golden needs to do to secure a coach of the year. I'm looking at Tennessee, their schedules, and obviously the Q1, Q2, all that fluctuates, it changes, but I could see them having double-digit Q1 wins. They have the talent, they have the experience. Here's what I'm circling on my calendar. February 10th. We got to wait all the way till February till they play Texas A&M. February 10th in College Station is going to be a madhouse. And then 2 weeks later, TAMU goes to TBA. That stretch, I believe that 2 week stretch is going to determine the SEC champion. And that's why I'm going to go with Tennessee. I said a couple weeks ago, Taylor, about how I don't want folks, and I'm really urging folks to, and do the same thing with Matt Painter, but I'm urging folks to not use their preconceived notions about some of these coaches like Rick Barnes to dictate their philosophy. I think that's so foolish to do. Tennessee, and you're right, there's a ton of pressure on Rick Barnes in Tennessee. This has to be the year, and it starts. I think they're good enough. I think they're composed enough to win the SEC. The question then becomes what happens in March, and we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge when we arrive at it. But as it relates to the regular season, the SEC runs through Knoxville.
Well, and I also want to. I don't think we mentioned another transfer, Jordan Gainey from South Carolina Upstate on that team too. He
Yes.
averaged 15 points a game. I don't think he starts on this team just from a position standpoint. Jonas, and what did A do?
Adu.
What did A do there? I think is going to get the start just as big there on that team. But I mean, talk about a great person to bring off the bench. Seemingly, it is always tough to determine with transfers, right? Especially ones who aren't as highly ranked as like a Connect Three or a Hunter Dickinson or whatever, guys that we know, especially Hunter Dickinson, like he could have transferred anywhere and we know he was going to be good, right? But some of these guys who average 15 points a game at a smaller school, but I think for him, like a 6-man or a guy off the bench type of role is really good for him. And if there is an injury, knock on wood, right there, hope we can hear that. Then I mean,
Yes.
he's an experienced guy. Tucson, Arizona's own
Yep.
Jordan Gainey there. So I'm a guy that can step in, has experience, and fill in if there is an injury with this team, or like we said, quite frankly, if we need some offense. So, unfortunately for Tennessee fans, their football season ended a little earlier than the basketball season this year. So I'm sure that they should be really hyped up for this basketball team here.
We've covered Vescovy, we've covered Ziegler, Dalton Connect, and that's going to be a big jump for him going from what, the Big Sky Conference, I think Big Sky Conference basketball, Northern Colorado, to SEC Tennessee hoops, playing in RUP, playing in TBA. We talked about him. You mentioned Adu, Jordan Gainey. One more guy, the X Factor. Throw up the X's, T. And he's a guy that's given you fits because you can never get his name right.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up because
He's
that was going to be the last thing I brought up. Is I promise to the life of me, I'm just going to go to bed every night saying Josiah Jordan James, Josiah, not Jeremiah for some reason. Josiah Jordan James, Josiah Jordan James. That's yeah. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Right.
We've graduated from last year where it was just, hey, just stick with JJJ or J cubed, right? Triple J. Josiah Jordan James, the X Factor, baby. He's back. Very well could be a Van Wilder guy. I feel like we've been talking about Josiah Jordan James now for the last 5 years, but I'm very excited for this Vols team. Book it. they're going to win the SEC title. Now, Taylor, real quick before we go to transfers, out of these three, Coach of the Year, Player of the Year, Champ, what is the pick that you're most confident in?
Tennessee.
Me too.
Yeah. I think there's so much, like, Coach of the Year is so much of so many variables that aren't even on coaching at time, like, which is the entire reason I'm taking Musselman in the first place. All of his team got hurt last year. So those variables are there. And then Wade Taylor, I mean, we talked about how much we like him, but we did say, hey, he does have some issues that need to be, fixed for him to be at that level. And he, quite frankly, does have, my reasoning for picking him is he's kind of the standout guy on his team. But like I said, I'm not sure he's actually the best player in the conference, though, either. So, yeah, I think Tennessee just top to bottom is I don't want to say they're the easy pick because it's interesting. The odds don't, like, I felt this was a pretty, I guess easy isn't the word. I would have had to talk myself out of Tennessee, right? But the odds say that, like, Arkansas and Alabama have a higher opportunity or better odds to win the national championship, and I just don't. I don't agree. I guess I don't agree with that. Maybe it's because they have a higher ceiling just with some of the transfers that they got. They have more high level talent, but I think Tennessee's floor, like, what's the worst Tennessee could finish in this conference? Third, maybe,
Yeah,
if the sky
fourth. Yeah.
falls, is maybe third, right? And unless they have a complete meltdown in the tournament, I have no idea how a team that has this many 23-year-old talented players on it could not at least make the Sweet 16. Like, that's got to be their floor this year, right? Has to be. Like, the worst possible outcome has to be they finish third in the conference and lose in the Sweet 16. I think anything below that is just an absolute tragedy for them.
100%. But the thing is, we've seen those tragedies so often.
This is
FDU,
also true. Yeah. Right.
that's just the sport. That's literally the sport. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the general thought process is, yeah, Tennessee's going to be maybe a 6-7 loss team entering the tournament. Will they get matched up with an absolute terrible, terrible matchup, a 15 versus a 2 or 16 versus 1, which we've seen a couple times now? That very well could happen. But again, as it relates to the regular season, I'm very confident in my Tennessee pick as well. I'm also confident in Wade Taylor, though, too.
Well, and I hate to harp on the odds thing again, but they have the same odds to win the national championship as, like, USC does. And it's like,
That's a little
that doesn't, it just doesn't strike me as accurate, I guess. Like, Creighton is higher than them.
well, you know what?
Marquette's higher than them.
Maybe we're undervaluing USC too, though, because they
Well,
have
I
a
don't.
dynamic backcourt.
Point being, maybe just, are we making this pick now? I'm questioning it, right? Like, what are we missing? Like, like,
Nothing. Stay confident.
where it's like maybe Vegas has seen this team too many times and has seen this movie over and over, where they're like, oh, we already know what we're gonna get from this team. But yeah, I just feel like they're super undervalued in that aspect.
Yeah. Well, again, we're gonna cross March when that bridge when we get to it. We both agree Wade Taylor and Tennessee Coach of the Year. Let's see how it plays out. Musselman or Todd Golden or someone else. Let's get to our all transfer team, Taylor. Okay, and I want to hear some of your justifications. I want to hear your thought process on how you picked the 5 best transfers. That's because that's essentially what we're doing here. So I'll hand the floor to you. Who you got?
So Grant Nelson, I think, is in Dalton Connect are probably kind of one and the same for me on this. They're kind of the two most notable older transfers on this team, I would say, or of these transfers. Those two were pretty automatic for me. Smaller schools to bigger schools that were already talented. They're going to be on very good programs. Probably the top, they're going to finish in the top 3 in conference standings. So I like both of them. They've got size. They've got all the skills that are necessary. From there, I'm working my way down to, excuse me, I got too many windows open. Khalees Battles right behind there too. And then for me, from there, it starts to get a little fuzzy, where I kind of forgot that, like, L. Ellis was a transfer into this conference, who obviously played for, like, a horrible Louisville team last year, but dude scored like 25 points a game every game. I don't know if that's a tough guy to tell us how much playing time is he going to get. I don't even know if he projects as a starter uh, this year. And I don't think he does. You've got Aaron Estrada, who's going to play, who's going at Bama as well, along with Grant Nelson. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. You got Michael I can't say his name, Handlington, for Florida. Denver Jones is going to start at Auburn. Jalen Cook is the SEC or is the LSU player who had committed to LSU, then transferred to Tulane, and is now back at LSU. So that's just an interesting story there. But I think because we brought up Chris Beard earlier, I'm going to go with Brandon Murray at Ole Miss, just simply because another guy that is gonna have the ball in his hands a lot. I would think, just because Ole Miss isn't quite as talented as all these other teams, and so that's who I think it's going to be. I would take a shot in the dark there, but you've got. I mean, I'm not trying to give myself an excuse here, but shit, there's a lot of guys you could choose for this. I mean, and these aren't just like 3-star dudes like even Grant Nelson and Dalton Connect were the worst recruits of this, but they might be the best transfers. All these other guys are like 4 and 5-star recruits who ended up transferring. So I'm kind of all over the place with this. So I hate to not. I guess if you wanted me to pick, let me go back and pick the 5 so that when we have to screenshot this and see how wrong I am here in a couple months. For me, it's going to be Grant Nelson, Brandon Murray, Dalton Connect, Khalif Battle, and who's the other one I said? Grant Nelson, Brandon Murray, Dalton Connect, Khalif Battle, and
Estrada?
And Aaron Estrada.
All right. You're right. I mean, there's a plethora, and we're
I
gonna
really
have to
want
do
to pick.
this.
I
For
really
other
want to pick
conferences.
Denver Jones too because he's going to be a great it's
Great
going to be
name
very,
too.
yeah, I know, great, yeah. So those are my 5. So let's see how that plays out. I'm
Yeah.
talk about like confidence in picks. So low. I'm so low on this this confidence pick level.
One or two of them is going to hit. I'm very
Well,
confident in that.
sure, but parlaying all 5 of those together is just probably not going to end up correct for me.
So this guy isn't a transfer, but you mentioned Ole Miss, you mentioned Brandon Murray. I can't believe we've gone this far without mentioning Matthew Morrell's name. Like I said, he's not a transfer, but he's electric. I think he had a game last year where he hit like 7 or 8 threes, absolutely on fire. I want to see what he does with Ole Miss. Uh, I'm very excited for Ole Miss basketball, but just keep your eye on Matthew Morrell. But my all transfer team. All right. I'm going to start with my top 5, and this is in order. All right. I ordered this. And basically, my thought process was how impactful is the, like, I tried to average impact with winning. Okay. So obviously, if you are the most like Hunter Dickinson, okay, if he goes and transfers and he's the best player on Kansas and they're the best team in the country, he's the number one like that's kind of my thought process there. So I'm going to start here with Aaron Estrada. And my list may surprise some folks, but I'm going to start with Aaron Estrada. Okay. Transfer from Hofstra. He's now over there at Bama. And I think he's going to be the most impactful transfer in the conference and outdoing Grant Nelson there. He's got quite a history. I think he started at St. Peter's, then he went to Oregon, and then he went to Hofstra. And Hofstra was a game away from going to the NCAA tournament, had a really competitive title game, conference title game against Charleston. Of course, Charleston ends up going to the NCAA tournament, but I love what Aaron Estrada is going to do. And also another piece of criteria, Taylor, these guys are bucket getters, absolute bucket getters. Next one, we talked a little bit about him already. Zion Pullen, man. I love this kid. I think early last year, he had a game winner where he exploded for 30 some odd points and no one was awake and no one was paying attention because he was playing for UC Riverside. Get to know the young man. I'm telling you, he's going to be a huge difference maker in the SEC and for the Florida Gators. I love Zion Pullen. Next, we talked about him a little bit, Dalton Connect. Again, I have to reiterate, the biggest concern for me is going from Northern Colorado and the Big Sky to the SEC in Tennessee. And I suppose you can make the same case for UC Riverside to Florida. I suppose you can make the same case for Aaron Estrada, although he's played at Oregon before, and Hofstra's no slapdick, right? Dalton Connect, I feel like I've watched 2 games of Northern Colorado's over the course since we've started this podcast. But he is going to be a huge difference maker, and I can't wait to see what he does in contributing to a very good team. Khalif Battle, I'm with you. All right, Khalif Battle now over at Arkansas. Take your pick. But I think Khalif Battle is going to be a great difference maker, and he's going to mesh well with Eric Musselman's style. Here's a name that was not brought up at all. Kurt Lewis. Kurt Lewis over at Missouri. I don't think Missouri is going to be super good. I think Dennis Gates had a really strong first year, but a lot of that had to do with some of the personnel, and I think there is some roster turnover. But Kurt Lewis is going to be I think he's going to be the best player for Mizzou this upcoming season. He spent a couple seasons at Eastern Kentucky. I think he even went to JUCO and then came to Missouri after that. I'm not 100% sure. But Kurt Lewis, I love what this kid's going to bring to the table in Columbia. Some other names that we have to mention, but those are my five. Okay, Aaron Estrada, Zion Pullen, Dalton Connect, Khalif Battle, Kurt Lewis. Kurt Lewis was a tough decision to take over Trey Mitchell, who we did not mention. Trey Mitchell coming to Kentucky from West Virginia, but Trey Mitchell's just been everywhere. Look at his past. He has been on so many different teams. I don't know if it's finally going to click there at Kentucky, but wishing him nothing but the best. Let's not sleep on Eli Lawrence coming from Middle Tennessee State to Texas A&M. Jalen Cook, you mentioned. Andrew Taylor from Marshall to Mississippi State. Noah Thomason, Niagara, now playing at Georgia. You mentioned Brandon Murray. Talon Cooper coming from Minnesota, a terrible team last year, to South Carolina. Maybe he can provide some juice. And again, these are names that I think are going to have huge impacts. I don't know if they're going to win many games, but those guys are going to get some nice stats. Denver Jones, you mentioned. And then last but not least, just keep a very lazy eye out for Allen Lubin coming over from Notre Dame to Vanderbilt. And I've seen Jerry Stackhouse find success with a roster that some may sniff at or scoff at. There's no Scottie Pippen Jr. anymore, but let's see if Allen Lubin can contribute to Vandy. But again, just to recap, Aaron Estrada, Zion Pullen, Dalton Connect, Khalif Battle, Kurt Lewis. Look out for those guys.
Man, like I said at the start of this show, having not looked as deeply into the other conferences in terms of, like I know who Arizona's transfers are, right? I know a couple UCLA, I haven't dove as deep into the transfers like in the other conferences quite yet, but boy, it's shocking to see how many good players that, so I'm sure at the end of the year we're going to be like, why the hell did we pick those three guys? They didn't even play, So, here's a question for you, not to get off the transfer team too much yet, but we are like 56, 57 minutes into this program right now. And we have talked about Kentucky in an SEC basketball preview for 30 seconds.
Wow.
Thoughts?
Good. I'm happy with it. And I think it's deserved. I truly think it's deserved, man. The teams have caught up. And I love Calipari. I love Kentucky. And shout out to them for scheduling them in Indiana, getting that back on the radar, starting, I think, 25-26 season. But Taylor, they got a bunch of new faces coming in.
They're just kids.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite traditions every single year. Am I supposed to sit here in good conscience and say that they're better than Tennessee, that they're better than Texas A&M? I don't think they are.
I mean, it's just crazy how much college basketball has shifted in just such a short amount of time, because you got Justin Edwards, Aaron Bradshaw, DJ Wagner, and Rob Dillingham. You're talking about some of the very best players in the country. DJ Wagner is a guy that's been talked about as a prospect for many, many years. The freshman of the year in the conference is likely going to come from this team, just specifically because everybody else in the conference is damn near 23 years old, like we've been saying, just because of all the transfers. And so I think it's been proven enough, and I'm sure a couple of people would disagree with me, but I think it's been proven enough that we've seen that the one and done is not the recipe for success as it relates to college basketball anymore. Mixing in a one and done is probably the way to do it. Mix your NBA player in to a bunch of old guys that know how to play basketball. And I completely, I could see Kentucky being arguably the most talented team, however you want to phrase that in the
I don't think that'll ever change.
Right, but I can also see them losing like 12 games this year, and so they do have Antonio Reeves, right? Who
very good player.
Yeah. Don't call me Reeves Nelson or Austin Reeves, but the only other Reeves I think I can think of. So he's a senior, which is almost unheard of in Kentucky's basketball program. How many players can legally drink on Kentucky's basketball team each year? Maybe two. The walk-ons that have been there for 4 years, right? But It's just kind of crazy that Kentucky is, in our estimation, perhaps the best college basketball program in this here United States of America, right? And we just did an almost entire hour of an SEC preview where they have maybe the most talented, again, with air quotes, whatever that means to you, roster, and yet we're not considering them for a player of the year, certainly not for a transfer of the year, certainly not for a coach of the year, and we're not considering them for champ. I didn't even cross my mind to take them as a top even like 3 team in this conference.
Yeah, and look, if Kentucky wants to play the disrespect they slept on us card, I don't mind that because this season, yeah, brother, I am sleeping on you. You might go
Mm-hmm.
to the NCAA tournament, but again, I mean, when was the last time they got to the second weekend? Who did they lose to this past year? Kansas State. They packed them up pretty good. Like Taylor, am I? And this is a rhetorical question. Am I supposed to sit here and say that they're better than Tennessee? No, I don't think they're
No,
better than TAMU. I think they're in a mix with Florida, Bama, and Arkansas. Like I don't even know if they're for sure better than Florida, Bama, and Arkansas.
I don't. They're not. They're not better than Bama or Arkansas. I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, I
mean,
think it's a
Florida.
discussion,
Yes,
but
I think they're better than. I think they'll be better than
okay.
Florida. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're that second. They're the second level school, or they're second level for this series year,
Exactly.
right? They're not going to finish in the top 3 for sure. Probably not in the top 4, which means that they're in that probably 12-6 in conference type of range, right? They're going to beat up on, yeah, great. So they're going to beat up on Missouri, and they're going to beat up on South Carolina. They're going to beat up on, whoever else is at the bottom feeder at this point in the conference. And so, but there's going to be a lot of tough games for them that they're just not going to have the experience, in my estimation, to play in, or at least succeed in. So, I mean, they'll play well at home just because they play rough, and that's what they do. And Coach Cal is obviously a Hall of Fame coach. But yeah, it's just super interesting. And I'm the big recruit guy of our twosome here. Like, I'm the guy that is always singing the praises of recruits. And so that just really, yeah, goes to show you how like the experience factor in college basketball has really flipped on its head for a team like this with almost this exact roster makeup 10 years ago was undefeated, and it was considered to be one of the greatest basketball teams of all time. And yet 10, 12 years later, we're like, yeah, I don't know. They might finish 5th in their conference. So that's just kind of a pretty crazy thing to look at how much that's flipped.
Definitely is. Two last things on Kentucky. One, they remind me quite a bit actually of the New England Patriots. Legendary head coach. They have had remarkable success. And say what you will about Calipari only winning one title at Kentucky, everyone should know this about me. If you get the Final Fours, that for me is the measure of success, and he has multiple Final Fours. But they haven't really done much recently, especially in the postseason. Neither have the Patriots and Bill Belichick. It's kind of getting a little stale there. So I'm not saying, look, Cal's probably constantly on the hot seat. I think he's earned as much leeway as possible, just like Bill Belichick. But both of those teams are not beating the upper echelon Final Four, uh, Elite Eight, or an AFC title game, Super Bowl, AFC divisional round playoff opponents, right? They're going to beat up on a Zach Wilson led Jets. They're probably going to beat up on a South Carolina Gamecocks team, like you had mentioned. They'll take care of those businesses. But as it relates to beating a potential top 3, top 2 seed, I personally don't see it this upcoming season. Every single year, it changes, and who knows what Calipari is going to do in the future. That's just me for this upcoming season. Just the last part about Kentucky. If any of the rabid BBN fans catch this, please tweet at us and be angry and spread it out like wildfire, because I know how insane you guys are. So if it gets us more publicity, please go ahead, roast us.
So, Sub, I don't expect you to remember what my favorite quote is of all time if we could get really deep here for a second, despite the fact that this quote is from a Nazi sympathizer, Henry Ford. Let's just leave that part out. But the same thing that causes your business to succeed is also the same thing that causes it to fail. Passionate adherence to a strategy. Patriots and Kentucky are perfect examples of that. The same thing that caused them to be the greatest programs, perhaps, in their sport for a 10 to 15 year period is also the same thing that's causing them to fall way behind. And really, especially as it relates to the Patriots, I mean, who would ever thought that the Patriots would be in discussion? Or maybe are we going to tank out for a number 1 pick?
Caleb,
You
let's
know, like
go.
that's crazy. It's just crazy to think that sticking with the same strategy works until it doesn't, right? And that's exactly like you said. To your point, that's exactly what's going on with those two programs. It's a great comp. It's like a perfect comp, I believe.
Can we lump in Clemson too and Dabo?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, totally.
All right.
That's yeah.
That way
Exactly.
we got all three of the major
No,
players
100%.
there.
And no, it's a exact perfect example as well.
All right, Taylor, let's go ahead, get on out of here with a little fun. Can I grill you now? This is a surprise.
Oh
A
God.
little SEC trivia. A
Okay.
little SEC trivia.
I
Why don't
like
you
I
get?
like trivia. If you're gonna
Yeah.
give me new faces in new places, I was probably gonna fail like Charles Barkley on Inside the NBA. But I'll take.
Kwong Dong Tigers.
Yeah,
Ni hao. Ni hao.
yeah. Police presence. I'll bring that. Yeah, say that again for the second episode in a row.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm all about the trivia. I'll take trivia.
Taylor, let's do this. I'm gonna put the ball in your court for the next conference that we do. You can give me a couple trivia questions, but let's get on out of here with some SEC trivia. And this is something that I came up with on my own. The questions, because I found it very, very interesting. All right.
Okay.
There's two schools, Taylor, two schools that have not had an SEC Player of the Year. Who are those schools?
I would guess that Sindarius Thornwell for South Carolina won SEC Player of the Year. So I don't think it's South Carolina.
I can confirm that thought.
Missouri.
Missouri is one.
That's kind of cheating though, because they've only been in the SEC for like 10 years.
Not cheating. Oh no, they've been in it for like approaching 15 or 14 years.
Okay, what I'm just saying that they're not like life.
Go get one.
And
Yeah,
then
fine. Still interesting. But yeah, who's the other school?
Without dragging this out for too long. Texas A&M?
Yeah, I was going to say use the same sort of logic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Texas A&M. Until this year, of course.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Wade Taylor's going to make some history. So that's right. Mizzou and TAMU. They have been part of the SEC now since 2012. All right. I guess it's only been 10 years. Fine.
Also, we haven't brought this up yet. Sorry not to cut into the middle of trivia. Next year's conference previews are going to be totally wild, by the way, because half these teams are, we're going to have Oklahoma and Texas thrown into this. Like, I know that's cart before horse here, but it's going to be we're going to have to do like 3-hour long preview episodes.
Yeah.
We're only going to have like 3 conferences to cover, but there's going to be 28 teams in all of them and 14 national championship contenders in each of them. So
it's just do the national landscape as it is.
Right.
Yeah. But Mizzou and TAMU, no SEC Players of the Year. Here's my other SEC question for you. Florida has only 2 Players of the Year, which is shocking to me. They only have 2. Can you name them?
I bet you it's not from the time period that we would think that they were from. Maybe.
Yeah.
Taylor,
you're hot.
Not the national championship teams.
You're hot.
Or the Joakim Noah championship teams, I would say.
Yes.
Is Mike Miller one of them?
No.
Not
a bad guess, though.
He was 2001, right? 2001?
Yeah, like 2000,
right.
2001.
Boy, that's tough. I don't think Chandler Parsons was the player. Or was he the player of the year?
Taylor, you are hot today. That's impressive. Chandler Parsons.
And then
was
I guess
a player of the year.
Give me a third guess, I guess, at this.
How about this? Let me give you one more hint. Don't go pre Chandler Parsons.
Shit. Talking. Boy, I've drawn a blank on this one. Maybe I'm not as hot as I thought I was.
I mean, this is a difficult one. Some of these names are honestly kind of ridiculous, but this is a difficult one.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm good.
I'm drawing a total blank here.
Scotty Wilbekin.
Boy, that must have been a down year in the conference.
Dude, not to be disrespectful, but some of these names for player of the year is I was a bit shocked.
So he would have won that in what, 2012?
13, 14.
Yeah.
13, 14.
Right. because he was on
Yeah,
that. Talking about Arizona, he was on that Arizona or team
yep,
that played at McHale Center on the greatest day of Tarun Subramanian's life, the
that's
greatest
right.
day of his life. Yes. So
But a little crazy that Florida only has 2 POIs, huh? Maybe I don't know. Maybe
well,
I'm
but it's the
wrong and
same.
thinking it's
It's
crazy.
kind of the same. Same concept as why we're picking Wade Taylor versus any of the Tennessee guys.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, those guys were elevated. Those guys were national championship, but they had 5 NBA players as the starting lineup, and there wasn't like one guy who was going to take the reins to such a degree that a Corey Brewer, if he was by himself, could have been. Joakim Noah easily could have been a conference player of the year if he wasn't on the Florida, but all of them playing together was just too many mouths to feed.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a good point. 2019-20 season, COVID, but again, no disrespect to some of these players, but Mason Jones from Arkansas, Reggie Perry from Mississippi State, and Emmanuel Quickly from Kentucky had a three-way tie.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and then damn, I forgot Grant Williams was a two-time SC Player of the Year. That
Wait, what
dude
did
was
you wait?
nasty.
Who was one of the three? Name those three that tie again.
Reggie Perry, Reggie Perry.
How about Herbert Jones?
Herb Jones did win. He won the
Yeah,
following
yeah,
year.
yeah. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, I knew he was in
Which
there
is
somewhere.
crazy, actually. Like Bama's got 2 of the last 3. Basketball school.
Yeah. Well, yeah, one of them could have been in jail instead of being the player of the year, but that's fine. That's a whole nother discussion. We've left that in the past.
Yes, we have. Let's get on out of here, though, Taylor. Thank you all for listening. Any baseball predictions? Any cheat teams? You're in the Valley. Diamondbacks are playing right now, actually.
D-backs are a pretty easy cheat team. Friend of the program, Cody Hoxie, is coming to visit this week, and he's the biggest baseball guy that I know. So
There's a
D-back,
Yankees guy, too. They stink.
yeah. Well, our
They're going to extend Boone.
the
Ask him
team,
that.
the team we root for didn't exactly,
Yeah,
field a
that's
much
fine.
better team. But D-backs are easy cheat team. Them and the Suns are my probably obvious cheat teams as it relates. I don't really have a cheat football team. I mean, I think that's a whole different story for most people. I think your NFL team is kind of your NFL team. Um, Basketball, you at least can root for players that you like, and then of course being in a market where the team is going to be good. I want a reason to go to these games, right? So I think having a local team as your cheat team is like an okay thing. Um, the do you like Bryce Harper?
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't
yeah,
mind. I
I
like
kind of
Bryce
like this.
Harper.
I
I
kind of
like
like to
him.
see the
I like him
Phillies.
because he's so good. Like he has to be that good to be that big of a dickhead.
They've been kind of like a Cinderella, or not Cinderella, but like a cardiac type of team this year. They come back in the 8th and 9th innings a lot. Um, and they have a great home crowd too. Bryce Harper the other day throwing his helmet into the crowd was entertaining. So I mean, maybe them too, but yeah, D-backs are a pretty obvious one for me. And Corbin Carroll's awesome. Like, what a cool
Yep.
player to build your franchise around. The obvious rookie of the year, and he actually just homered about 5 minutes ago as we're recording this too to tie the game. So yeah, pretty cool. He's a great storyline. So what about you? What's your cheat team here?
So again, I have to reiterate, I've been tweeting this and retweeting it since 2018 because I've long had this thought, but just in 2018, I had to say it because I think I was in an argument or something. But the baseball has, in my estimation, really, bar none, the best postseason of all the
Agreed.
major sports. Like
Agreed.
there's nothing better than hearing the crack of the bat and the crowd pop right after that. There's so many moments. It's the perfect length, best of 3, best of 5, best of 3, best of 5, best of 7, best of 7. It's over pretty much in a month. Okay. And just the moments are so good. Each pitch, there's no clock. You got to get 27 outs. It's excruciating. Some of the best moments, really. So I love the baseball. I think it's second to March Madness. I'm being 100% serious.
So would you rank? I feel like I rank the playoff entertainment in reverse order of the sport that I care about the
Like
most.
the most? Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Pro.
Baseball and baseball and hockey are kind of tied for me in terms of like which
I just don't care about hockey.
I pay attention to all of these sports though, like more so than like a normal person even should. So it's not like ranking like, oh, I don't pay attention to one or the other. But like baseball is one, hockey playoffs are way cooler than like the NBA playoffs are the worst.
Oh,
I
they
think
suck.
by far, because
They really do.
the first 2 rounds are just like, all right, hey, let's blow everybody out, and then
Well,
in
the thing about the NBA playoffs is like when there's potential for an upset, it's never going to happen, right? Like in baseball and hockey, the Bruins lost right to the Panthers. Like in basketball, in the first couple rounds, like it takes what the Heat did in the ECF to actually pull it off. Because in the ECF, people were like, "Yo, this could absolutely happen," where they beat the Celtics. When the Hawks won 2 games against the Celtics in the first round, no one was like why are you elongating this to 6 games, Trae Young? This is over.
there's so much like finality maybe that comes with like baseball and uh hockey playoffs. Like the only thing I would say that's better than like very specific moment that's better than baseball is like an overtime hockey game in a deciding game.
Sure.
That's maybe even more stressful than a baseball playoff extra inning game, which I mean it's all kind of the same thing. But it's the only 2 sports. Don't argue with me that you can hit a last second shot. Yeah, I understand that you can do that too. But like the stress that is like one pitch,
Yes.
if this is either a home run or it's a like there's only 2 outcomes for basketball. The ball's either going to go in or it's not. It's a make or miss league. So but baseball, there's so many different variables to each individual pitch, and in those crunch times, that's what part of what makes it great.
But the thing is also, Taylor, length. Like,
No,
and I agree. I just don't care enough about hockey. So if you want to
sure,
roast me, feel free. But like the
no.
length, they're all best of sevens. Same thing with the NBA. Like it's so damn long. Baseball is the perfect length. Whereas and football, like look, again, I'm probably going to get smoked because everyone just they love football. They need to be inundated with NFL stuff, content. Let me let you in on a little secret. The NFL playoffs last year kind of stunk,
They
except for
kind
the
of
Super Bowl.
they kind of suck every year.
Every year they do. Thank you, Taylor. They absolutely do, with the exception of the Super Bowl last year and then the AFC title game. What I got to watch Josh Johnson for the Niners go out there against one of the best defenses in the Eagles. What the hell are we doing here? Boo! Tomato, tomato, tomato. Like baseball is the best. Bryce Harper going yard in the bottom of the ninth. Like it's unbelievable. Drama filled. Anyway, to answer your question though, some of my cheat teams, because you're right, the Red Sox absolutely suck. I'm absolutely going with the Twinkies. Number one, Twins. And they secured their first postseason win in like 30 years or 20 years, whatever the hell it is. I want them to find success. I just want Minneapolis to be happy because they don't got much. The Vikings, they stink this year. Everyone called them frauds last year, and they were. Timberwolves, I got Ann Edwards. That's awesome. But they've had Kevin Garnett in the past. They've got Cat Towns, right? They've had Randy Moss. Like nothing's ever really happened, and the Timberwolves aren't really a threat. I just want the Twins to be good. Like coupled with the fact that Minneapolis just doesn't have good sports, and the fact that the Twins are so snake bitten in the postseason. Finally, they're not playing the Yankees like a star-studded Yankees team. I'm really rooting for the Twins. I'm glad they jumped out to a lead. I can tell you it really pains me. I can't root for the Marlins because I swear to God, if another scrappy underdog team from Miami makes a deep run and I have to watch the Levitard crew go crazy, I'm going to lose it. So they're out. I don't look Milwaukee, Wisconsin versus Arizona again. Come on, D-backs, do it one time. Hopefully, so I'm rooting for the D-backs there, and also the Orioles. I love the Orioles. They're a really good ball club, and they've endured some really terrible times. So those are probably my top 3, right? I'll go Twins, Orioles, and D-backs.
So before we spend 20 minutes on the baseball playoffs here, I'm not rooting for the Dodgers at all. I
Yeah,
think that's
no,
nobody likes them. But it's hard to not like the Braves, in my opinion.
I
Like
love the Braves.
they're so cool. Well,
Yeah,
I'm glad that they're so good because Acuna is just so. I mean, talk about electricity. That guy is a nuclear power plant. Like that guy
he's
is.
so much fun.
It is, and so it's a lot of times you root against the best team, right? But I think in this year's playoffs, I'm like, man, a Phillies like Braves playoff would be, or NLCS would be awesome. I think that would be even cooler. It won't get the same national like play as like a Dodgers Braves would be, but I think Phillies Braves would be super fun just with the firepower that. And yeah, I know Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, whatever, cool, that's great. But But yeah, like a Bryce Harper versus Ronnie Acuna is kind of what I'm hoping for
I
on
mean,
that side.
we could get it next round. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I
excuse
mean,
me. Yeah, right. Excuse me. Yeah, you're right.
but hey, don't forget about my boy Schwarber too. I love Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah.
Just
Mhm.
putting all the nerds into a frenzy. Kyle Schwarber's not a good baseball player because all he does is hit home runs. He doesn't get on base. Like, let Kyle Schwarber just mash potato home runs and let's get out of here. Um, but no, like it's weird, Taylor. Like I look at some of these dominant teams, like everyone always says, "Oh, you must." I can't stand Alabama. I love Alabama football. I think it's cool when they're good. Like I got no issues with them. I got no issues with the Dallas Cowboys, and like I like when the Cowboys are good. I got no issues with Notre Dame football. I don't have even that much of an issue with Duke basketball. Like it doesn't. Maybe I should get that card taken away from me, but I see the point that I mean, the Braves are more fun than any of those teams I think that I mentioned because you're right.
But
They're an
but
electric
if the
factory.
Braves were this good in 4 years, we're gonna be like, God, I'm so tired of them. Like,
But
yeah.
see, like that, Bama's been good for like pretty much my entire collegiate up till now life, and I'm
Look,
not tired of them.
we're 3 weeks into Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, and we're already tired of it. It was the best thing in sports like 2 weeks ago, and now it's like, okay, let's get out of
Okay,
here. Let's
and
get done with this.
maybe I need someone studying me and like maybe I'm a hypocrite. Yes, the Chiefs absolutely pissed me off, but you mentioned it. It's because of friggin' Travis Kelce. It's because of Brittany Mahomes, dude. Like they are so annoying. Do we have anyone like that in Bama? I don't think so.
No, they're not there for long enough. No,
That's true.
yeah. Say,
That's true.
Lane Kiffin when he was there, maybe. Like I don't. Yeah,
Kiffin's cool as fuck. I don't
yeah.
know. We are totally off the rails. Awesome.
This is
first
a throwback to
preview.
Coast to Coast here, Coast to Coast on Camp Radio. This is pretty much how that went back in
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Well, you know the former or the first host Ted, he couldn't do baseball. Like around this time, he would be talking about the implications of like he would be so fired up to talk about Commanders Bears. I mean, the Commanders are still alive, but it's like who gives a shit what the Bears do? Like I don't.
Previewing Lions draft picks for the next year in September.
Oh my goodness. Shout out Ted. He's our boy. That's talking baseball though. Taylor, awesome first episode, first preview. That is the SEC. We put a bow on it. Cannot wait till we jump back in. Taylor, I'm going to give you a little preview on the rest of the folks. ACC's up next. All right. Can we do that? Can we talk a little Atlantic Coast Conference? Thank you as always for listening. We'll catch you next time here on Theater and College Hoops.